All right, kia ora everybody. Welcome back to Kōrero with Creators. Today's guest is another one of the Moko artists that I use personally for a lot of my work, most notably this hair on my throat, which lots of people incorrectly assume that it was done alongside the rest of my face, but it actually wasn't. The throat was done separately, and this is the artist here, Tristan, aka Manawa Tapu. Kia ora, bro. Good to see you.
Kia ora, good to see you too.
I'm always being asked about moko, and I try to tell people that the answers lie with the very people who upkeep this taonga, you guys, the moko artists. So I wanted to give my platform to moko artists to hopefully give some clarity regarding these traditions and to particularly focus on how they're affected by the age of social media and online spaces. So I really want the audience over the course of now what is a multitude of episodes to see these variation in ideologies amongst moko artists. You know, we quite often have this misunderstanding that there's going to be a one-size-fits-all answer for these things, and that's absolutely not the case. So be absolutely as honest as you can. But before we get started, introduce yourself, let everyone know who you are.
Ko tarakea te maunga, ko moetangi te awa, ko tinana te waka, ko tumuana te tangata, ko mātihiti te marae, ko te tau maui te hapu, ko te raroa te iwi, no mitimiti ahau, ko Tristan Marler tōku ingoa.
Mean. Nice and straightforward. Now, just to get us kicked off, one of the questions that I've been enjoying asking first, particularly because even though it seems kind of simple in its nature, so far the answers, you know, they can be quite varied in how people interpret moko, and that is the question. I would love to hear your definition or personal interpretation of moko. What does it mean to you?
To me, moko is a representation of your not only your whakapapa, but your life's journey, your achievements, your milestones. So anything that is your identity and part of you, the moko is a representation of that.
Yeah, and well, I assume, you know, you're a relatively young person, you know, so how long have you been doing it, and what got you into doing moko?
So I've been doing moko since 2015, which I guess makes it coming up on 9 years. Coming up on 9 years. What got me into it was actually a sort of a few different channels, but prior to doing moko, I was doing whakaaro rākau, which is traditional Māori wood carving. I studied down in Rotorua at New Zealand Māori Arts and Crafts Institute for 3 years, from 2011 to 2014. And what got me into carving was actually traditional Māori music and instruments, taonga puoro. So I came in from a music angle and ended up carving, and then ended up doing moko. And so yeah, everything sort of segued, and it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, and I know just personally, you know, you obviously do moko, and you also do lots of really awesome art, like painting artwork kind of things. Do you still practice carving and things like that?
I haven't done much carving in the last few years, as I've been just prioritizing moko. Yeah. But I am going to be carving this year. I'm going to be taking a step back from moko and dedicating about 50% of my time to whakaaro and 50% of my time to moko and other pursuits such as jewelry making and my other art practice.
Yeah, awesome. And so you're 9 years on, like you said, still going, and it's become quite a focal point up until recently, you know. And what's been your favorite thing about doing moko for people, you know? What keeps you going?
One of the favorite parts for me is connecting with different people and hearing their stories and just getting to know them. You know, I get to meet such a range of different people, and I get to hear all these amazing stories and get to know these intimate details about people's lives, and it can be incredibly interesting. Yeah. There's never really a dull moment with this mahi, so that's probably one of the best parts.
Yeah, dope. And now, so my whole purpose surrounding this series, I suppose, is about how this age of social media has brought things like moko and Māoridom to the forefront, and how practitioners and revitalizers, I suppose, of these crafts, you know, deal with these things. But what is your personal relationship with social media?
Well, I think when I started tattooing, you know, that started my learning journey. I adopted social media. I hadn't been a social media user before that. But I adopted it straight away because I was instructed that was a good way to market yourself and get yourself out there. I think social media is both a curse and a blessing. It's incredible that we have a free tool to advertise and put our portfolio out in the world, and to be able to connect with not only other moko artists and other artists in our community here in Aotearoa, but also artists in the international community. You can message people, you can have conversations, you can share knowledge, you can go and visit people in other countries or other cities, and as a networking tool, it's incredible. And obviously there are downsides as well.
The multitude.
Yeah.
They probably don't even need listing.
Yeah.
And with that, then, how have you felt about this exposure and popularization of moko online? It's really blown up in the past few years. And then hence creators like myself have, come to the forefront as being people who have moko. Do you have any thoughts about this? Yeah, how much moko is spreading and being shown to the world?
Well, I guess prior to social media becoming so massive, it would have been viewed through other platforms such as news articles, magazines, things like kapahaka, film, documentaries, and I think there was still a lot of interest in it, and I guess people maybe had to seek it out a little bit more. I think the way that social media has changed it. The way that social media changed it in some ways, like I was saying about, in terms of the networking that you can do and all these people being able to take inspiration, and share ideas, it's really helping the art form flourish. So there are definitely some great aspects of it that have been great for the art. And I think pushing Māori art and Māori culture out there to an international audience is a good thing anyway.
That's what I've kind of been reiterating, is that, for me personally, the majority of my following are not, I'm going to assume they're not Māori, because the location demographics, are all international outside of Australia and New Zealand, because of course lots of Māori live in Australia. But, and I say that the good thing about that is it shows us, Māori, New Zealanders even, that people in, the other ends of the earth have passion and enjoy hearing about our culture, our practices, our traditions, and hopefully it sort of uplifts those Māori that maybe when they only are exposed to what the New Zealand view of Māori can be, which in times like right now it can be not very positive, I think it's super important that social media allows us to show them that actually, look, people outside of our own little bubble of New Zealand and some of those few closed-minded people and communities that we have here, doesn't even matter. Look at all this love and support we get over here, and hopefully, starts to uplift Māori, especially the young Māori that are social media is their thing. They're growing up and seeing either all the negativity or all the positivity, and it can really, drill into their brains these things, and I get questions all the time from people who are just sort of like, oh man, it feels kind of difficult to be Māori right now, do I really want to be Māori? And especially those who have mixed heritage, they're like, oh, surely it's just easier that I just don't, and you go, no, look, please. So I definitely think it's one of the best things about that ability to share it far and wide, is to encourage our own people, like, no, look, it's amazing and it's beautiful. So I agree. Now, one question that I've been asking a few moko artists is surrounding moko kanohi on the artist themselves, because I kind of, people seem quite surprised, and I've had a few messages over the last few episodes that all but one of the artists actually have their kanohi done themselves, and I try to tell people, everybody's journey is very different, and just because you do, just because you do it doesn't even necessarily mean you have it. But so if you feel comfortable sharing, what's your journey, regarding your face, and why do you not have it yet, or maybe, are apprehensive about these things?
Yeah, so my journey's been sort of a thought process that has probably been since I was at carving school, and I guess I decided that I wanted to one day wear it, and over the last few years I've been building towards it. There isn't a rule that says that you need to be a fluent Te Reo speaker to wear it. Being Māori, having whakapapa Māori, and I guess being willing to learn more and to engage with the community and to strive to be the best person you can be. those are some of my goals, as well as pursuing becoming fluent in Te Reo Māori. I guess that's a limitation that I put on myself before I wear it. And the reason for that is because being fair-skinned, coming from a mix of different ethnicities, one of the concerns I have is being challenged, and I couldn't imagine anything worse than being challenged in Te Reo and not being able to back myself up. If I wanted to put someone down for trying to put me down, I want to be able to fight back.
Yes.
Without fear of embarrassment. So that's one of my things. But it's, I'm getting pretty close. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
no, that's great. And I just like this question too, because so far everyone's been comfortable enough to answer, and it really shows how personal everybody's, reasons can be. Like we say, and we will answer this question again later about the fluency thing. While pretty much nearly every artist themselves says no, it's not a necessity. If it's something that's holding you back, quite a lot of them as well go, oh, but for me personally, I would like to have that thing to make that step myself, so like everybody's reason is just, it can be completely personal, and for those who have been tuning in and see these frequently asked questions, and it's do you have to, and most of the time the answer is no, but if you want to, you absolutely can. So to wrap up this sort of section then, do you think more Māori should have moko?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, seeing the movement that's happened in the last 10 years already, especially with a whole younger generation coming through and wearing moko kanohi, male and female both, it's inspiring to see. It is incredible. And after having some conversations with some older moko artists, my understanding was that part of this movement is to change the way that moko kanohi is seen, and appreciated. Taking away the stigma that it had for so long as a result of things like gang culture or films, that portrayed moko kanohi in a negative light.
Yep.
So yeah, and instead portraying the light of upstanding citizens, Māori citizens who are representing our culture at its best.
Yeah, absolutely. And because for viewers who aren't entirely sort of familiar, I guess, because lots of these, particularly the international audience, they probably just see moko for how we portray it, and this cultural pride thing. But in New Zealand, it is a huge association that facial moko has with the New Zealand gang culture because of a history. I don't even know what dates. I'm terrible with dates. 60s, 70s, are we talking probably?
Yeah, I think it started in the 50s.
Oh, 50s, yeah.
I think so, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I'm bad with dates.
But I think since my childhood to now, the amount of people I see around town or anywhere wearing moko kanohi, I even without thinking about that, I barely ever see moko kanohi in public and associate it with gang culture.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And I think that many people now wearing them and representing us, that that stigma is pretty much done.
Yeah, and I would say for a certain, this current generation for sure, the only times that in my experience I see people with those same old affiliations is older people, who maybe were around during that period and they're stuck in their kind of ways. But I've never interacted with someone, kind of your age, my age, that ever makes comments of that nature, so it's definitely on its way out, that stigma. And you're right, that's exactly why some of these the revitalizing artists of that era, started bringing it back. I remember that's what Lance told me, was that's one of the big reasons they did it, because it was starting to get this certain affiliations, and they're like, we need to put it back in that positive light, like you said. We breezed through that first section, so I wanted a portion of these episodes to be dedicated to the questions that I'm always always being asked by my viewers, and hopefully over the course of the series they'll be able to see how much or how little variation there can be in your answers across the artists, and hopefully, more importantly, break down some of the misunderstandings surrounding moko. I guess some of the myths, kind of myth busting a few of these questions. Your answers can be as simple as yes or no, or as in depth as you want, but I would say that the one caveat here to sort of prevent yourself from having to preface each answer with "this is just my opinion," treat the questions, I suppose, as if you were answering a client who approached you with this question and you were like, "For me, blah 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 blah," otherwise everyone has to go, "That's just my opinion." But to kick it off, the very popular one is moko only for Maori.
No, and people have different opinions about that. Some believe that non-Maori can only wear kirituhi, and that moko is reserved for Maori only. I follow the school of thought where we just call it moko, call it what it is. The pattern's the same, irrespective of whether you whakapapa Maori or not. As long as people are coming from a place of respect and an appreciation for our culture, and if they are non-Maori, if they are allies to Maori, then I have no problem with it.
And how about I think I've asked you this before, but I can't quite remember because I don't see it often on your page. Are you a practitioner of moko kanuhi as well?
So far, I've done moko kauai.
That's right.
And I've been in conversations about moko kanuhi, but I haven't taken that step yet.
And so where would that sit for you in the same question about moko being only for Maori? Would you ever kanuhi non-Maori? Or?
No, I wouldn't. So there are some types of moko that we reserve for Maori only, and those are moko kanuhi and our puhuro. Pretty much any other area of the body is okay. Perfect.
Now, this is a terminology confusion that I see all the time, because in most of my videos I just call it moko, and I always get asked like, wait, what's the difference between moko and tā moko? I'm like, is it tā moko? Is it moko? Is it both? What's your knowledge and take around the terminology use?
My understanding is that moko is the moko, and tā is the application. Right. Of moko, so it's the process. Tā moko is the process of receiving those markings.
Yes. So I would personally probably consider it incorrect to call it a tā. Like I see lots of people call it a tā, right? When it's like, no, if you're going to shorten it, it's going to be moko, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
Yeah, it's like I'm calling. This is my application. You go now. And so obviously we've already mentioned before, and as viewers of me are very well familiar with, we're fair skinned, it means that we have mixed ancestry. And that's one thing that I can see a lot of Maori get very caught up on themselves, is those out there who have mixed ancestry, this terminology of part Maori, and that for lots of Maori, they don't consider themselves worthy or viable to receive things like moko. But can part Maori receive moko?
Yeah, so I don't think there's any such thing as part Maori. If you have any Maori whakapapa, then you are Maori. There's no part. You can acknowledge and identify with other parts of your heritage. Yes. But in terms of your whakapapa, there's no you're an eighth or a quarter percentage of your whakapapa. Yes. It is what it is.
Absolutely, and it's without a doubt the sort of that's the power, I guess, of the weapon or system that is blood quantum, and what it does to indigenous groups and ethnic groups around the world. But it's so ingrained, in people's mindsets. It's easily the hardest thing to unteach from people. I've made countless videos talking about how that concept of whakapapa works for us, and even then, in the comment section, someone will be going, "But what about if I'm?" And you go, "Oh man," it's like so ingrained.
And it's not. We never had that concept. It's an entirely European concept.
That's right.
To quantify someone's heritage based on percentages. We never had it, and it's been pushed onto us as a form of colonization to sort of further alienate us from our culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cancel
that.
Yeah. So this next question is normally particularly in regards to moko kanuhi, but do you have to have permission from your elders, in order to receive or go out and approach a moko artist to get moko done?
when I'm having a consultation with someone in regards to Moko Kanohi, I always ask them to sort of check all their boxes, which involves, everyone has their own personal journey, but I think to keep everybody safe, it's best to be as confident and as secure and safe going into it as possible. So if it means going back to your marae, having the blessings of your community, your whānau, especially your elders, as much support as you can get is going to be better. And I have said no to people before who for whatever reasons have told me they don't want to do that,
right,
or they don't feel like they need to, and it's made me feel unsafe. So I'll sort of back away at that point.
And what about for those Maori out there? I do get a few messages from people in these circumstances where maybe they have, what's the word? Not the best relationship with those family members because of whatever their family history might be, and say one side of the family that is Maori, say they come from mixed ancestry. The one side of the family that is Maori, maybe mum or dad is not in their life, but even though they have a non-Maori parent that they were born and raised with, they still want to be proud of being Maori. That permission thing, that family thing, how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I've had that in a few situations as well, and people have all sorts of backgrounds, and you can't judge people for any of that because things, people have things happen to them that are out of their control.
Right.
And in that case, the most important thing is to have the full support of your family, whether it be those immediate to you or
right,
whether it be your loved one, your spouse, whoever's the rock in your family who can stick by you and stand up for you. That's the person's blessing you need.
Yeah, awesome. Great answer. Now, this one I always get pulled up on because, I'm pretty young and lots of people have this idea, lots of the pictures they've seen of particularly Moko Kanohi, it's all on old chiefs, the Goldie, the Lindauer paintings, the old photos of the kings and that. But in reality, how old do you have to be to get Moko anywhere? What's the age for you? And then if you're also going to be doing Moko Kanohi, what sort of ages are we talking? Yeah,
so, legally in Aotearoa, you have to be 18 to get stated without parental consent, and 16 with parental consent. As a rule, generally nowadays, I just ask people to wait until they're 18,
right?
Because there's nothing wrong with waiting,
yep,
and just being more secure in yourself and confident and independent, knowing what you want. In terms of Moko Kanohi, I wouldn't put any age limit on it other than the legal one, and
yep,
being an adult, I guess.
Yeah.
I think traditionally we probably would have done a lot of our moko. People would have received it at a fairly young age, at least starting. With moko kaiwai for girls, it was sort of during puberty, and during the teenage years. Same thing, young men receiving their puhoro. That's a huge amount of trauma for your body to go through, and getting it done if you're middle aged or even older than that back then. You probably would have had a pretty high chance of getting sick or worse. The only maybe thing I think is that with Moko Kanohi, people would add to it in stages. So
yes,
that could have been done over years and years of someone's life, and re-inked, reworked. That might have been a process of someone's whole adulthood. I don't know though. I don't actually.
Yes.
I can't speak with any.
That's what I've heard too. And I think that's that biggest misunderstanding that I see a lot of people have in this modern age is that the whole thing kind of happens at once, or the whole thing represents one thing, but as lots of the artists have said, when it's particularly Kanohi, particularly men, of course, which eventually is a lot more coverage than Kauai, it's a stage process, so the young boys would start, that young teenage boys, would get that very first bit, nose, or kind of what I've got, I guess, maybe a little bit less without the nose. You start getting it young, and then as you progress through life, because like you said as well, at the time, from a trauma perspective, it's a lot for the body to take on. It's not like modern machines and modern medicine. We can get it done 6 hours and heal it in a couple of weeks. It's a much bigger process. I mentioned on one of the interviews, I've got photos of a tupuna who was painted by Lindau. I always forget which one, but we've got the paintings on, but we've also got photos of him, and even then he's sort of middle-aged to old between the painting and the photos. Even then you see how in one of them he's got incomplete lines, and then by the time he's come back for the painting, it's all complete, and we're talking probably the difference between 50 and 60 maybe, you know. So even that late in life, that was still filling out places. I can only imagine it's purely because to heal those wounds back then, it was much more strenuous than it is now. Now, we already covered this pretty much at the beginning already, but I'll just do it again so it's nice and clear. Do you have to be fluent in te reo Māori to get moko, particularly moko kanohi, where we see this restriction?
You don't have to be fluent in te reo Māori to receive moko or moko kanohi. However, it is widely encouraged. You know, there's at the same time as the revival of Māori culture in general, of moko, of te reo. You know, all these things have been revived, and they're flourishing, and people are taking a lot more on board now, and they're getting into it. I think in general there's an encouragement to learn te reo and to become a fluent speaker. Not as a rule for receiving moko, but you know, to have a better understanding, I think, of your Māori tongue and your position in the world. So it's encouraged.
Yes, you know, and I've always kind of say to people that, you know, they do go hand in hand. Like you said, moko is a representation of your Māori tongue. Included in that is the reo, you know. But I think a lot of people, they see moko as that's the end trophy, I guess. You know, it's kind of the end of the process for lots of people, and that's kind of how they see it. But I was talking to another artist, and you know, they said quite often what we see is for people who put that limitation on learning the reo before they get their moko done, at the end of their lives they don't have either, you know. But for lots of people who ended up making the jump to like really cement themselves in getting moko first as their, you know, foot in the door, I guess, that quite a lot of them by the end of their journeys had amounted to that, I guess, because it's more of a constant reminder. You know, every day you wake up in the mirror, you go, oh yeah, that's right, you know, and then, oh, okay, on to the next challenge, you know, and it's always there as a sort of guardian, I guess, you know, and that's kind of how lots of them sort of word it, you know. It's just like there's that spiritual side to the process of getting moko too that changes people, you know, changes people so much that when they come out the other end, regardless of that physical reminder, that emotional shift has happened in a lot of people, and it pushes them to reach those goals that they always had, you know. So if it's something holding you back, you know, think about it. But yes, generally the idea is that they do go hand in hand at some point, you know.
I 100% agree, and I always thought I'd have to be super fluent, a super fluent te reo speaker before I received my moko kanohi. But now, sort of after 3 years of study and getting there, you know, chipping away at it, I'm sort of feeling pretty ready now. To embark on that journey as well, and with the intention of just continuing, you know, just continuing to learn in any way possible.
You know, and as we mentioned, you know, it's also, moko itself is a sort of a staged process, as is learning a language, you know, so it can kind of follow you throughout your journey as well. You know, you can mark it and start it at the beginning, and then when you reach your, I don't know, say 10 years of learning te reo Māori milestone, you go and get another bit done, and, you know, and it's a kind of a symbol and a I can't think of what a word in English would be, you know, but it's something that it can follow you through the journey, and like I said, kind of be your guardian, you know. Now, I mentioned, I mentioned it it'll be off the record, but you know, I've got lots of stuff done by you before, and both times, one was in a actual like public city studio setting. This is for the audience's knowledge. And then the second time that I come back to you, you know, it's now in your home studio. So obviously you work out of a studio, and lots of Māori are conflicted about whether they have to get moko done at the marae. What are your thoughts? Yeah,
so I think it's up to people where they choose to receive their moko, and different rohe will have different. They'll have different protocols, and they'll have different kaupapa on. You know, some people will want to get tattooed next to their whānau on the marae, and I think for certain kaupapa that works really well. You know, like when you have moko papa and moko wānanga held at marae, and the kaupapa is around moko kanohi and revitalizing that within a hapu, then you know, I think that's incredible. That's an amazing thing to in areas that have lost it to bring that taonga back to people.
Yeah.
I think for other kinds of moko, it's not really necessary. I probably wouldn't travel to someone's marae to do a puhoro on them or to do a sleeve or something, because my space feels safer for me to do that.
And that seems to be an answer that's sort of carried, for the artists that, and pretty much all the artists would have their own studio that I've talked to, and some of them do the traveling, but ultimately a lot of them have said, even after those artists that have been doing it for a very long time, like Gordon Toy and people like that, they're like, after 20, 30 years of doing it, ultimately the best space and, like you said, the safest place for me is normally in my own studio, with where you can control your environment. And at the end of the day too, yes, it's a whānau affair, and there's a great celebration to be had, but it's a big thing. It's a big deal, and you want people like yourselves and the artists to be in as good a mindset as you can to do that to somebody, particularly the kanohi, that's just a big, serious bit of work to get done, and you wouldn't want any distractions of the wrong kind, and just to feel comfortable in your own space. And so following on from that one too, then is if we take it outside of the marae again, and we even go out of country now, we've got lots of Māori that live around the world that are conflicted about the idea that they have to return home to get moko done. What do you think? Do you have to get moko done here in Aotearoa?
No, I don't think you do. I think if you were living overseas and you were to seek out a moko artist who was living overseas or who was traveling over to you to receive moko, that's totally fine. I've traveled to do mahi before, a couple of times overseas. The last time was in 2019, and it was awesome. It was awesome being overseas. But I guess similar in a way to traveling anywhere for work, I realized, I became very homesick on that trip, and I decided that being at home and doing moko in my environment was for me, and where I felt comfortable and where my family is. So that's sort of how I feel about it. The only thing I would say about to people about receiving moko overseas is make sure your tamoko artist has whakapapa Māori, because that's a big issue that we see overseas is non-Māori tattooers appropriating our designs, calling them kirituhi, so they don't have to deal with the repercussions of stealing our patterns and making money off them, and that's a huge issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I've said around this question. It's the locations not as important. I mean, if you want to go home and get it done at home, hey, all power to you. Do that journey yourself. But if it's holding you back, you don't have to. But the ultimate important part is that the artist is a moko artist, like the location not so important in the grand scheme of it, but the artist is the key, because you get lots of questions sort of, can you draw it? Do you do that sort of thing? Can you draw it, send it to me and I'll get blah, blah down the road to do it? Nah, Ray.
Yeah, no, I don't. And I always tell people, if you like my designs, then get tattooed by me.
That's right.
Just wait, book your trip, get tattooed by me, and people do. I've been very fortunate. I've been incredibly fortunate that I've had people travel from overseas, from Brazil, from the States, from Europe, from Asia to get tattooed, and I think that's really special.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're getting tattooed by an artist who's not Māori and they're calling it moko, it's not moko.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the simple fact.
Yeah. So this is a kind of. I'm still not entirely sure where this idea comes from, but I see it all the time, and it particularly comes from, I think it's particularly young people that are asking me this sort of in hindsight of maybe turning 18 or becoming of legal drinking age, but also proud to be Māori. And it's this idea that you have to stop drinking and smoking and things like that normally once you receive things like moko kanuhi, and I was like, I don't have no idea where this idea came from, but is it true? Do you have to stop drinking, smoking if you receive moko kanuhi?
No, I don't think so. And I've heard that as well. I've heard the exact same thing: no drinking, no smoking. And no, I think what's meant by that is that once you start wearing moko kanuhi, you're instantly becoming a representative for Māori culture as a whole. Anyone who sees you is going to be looking at your face and thinking that, and to them, you are representing Māori culture.
That's right.
So if you're falling over in the gutter at 4 a.m. on K Road, off your face, that's what they're going to think of Māori culture, and that's how I've had it explained to me before, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
So there are no restrictions on what you can and can't do, other than that you should be an upstanding citizen and you should be representing Māori culture at its best.
Yes.
Not at a very poor level.
Yes, and that's kind of the understanding I have of it as well. It's like as someone quite simply said, if drinking and smoking makes you an asshole, then you should stop. But if it's not the actual act itself; it's about how you conduct yourself with moko. That is kind of the root of that. So kind of backtracking a bit to us talking about Māori of mixed ancestry. Quite often what can happen in these circumstances is, like we mentioned, a hypothetical of a non-Māori parent, maybe Māori parent is not in the life. So they grew up knowing they were Māori, but, with the predominantly non-Māori side of their family. So they might not grow up with things like whakapapa. Of course, this can also happen to our Māori that grew up in the system, that in, what's the word, like foster home kind of systems, adoption systems, and even just Māori who are disconnected, even if, regardless. And so it's about having whakapapa, and that once they know that they're Māori, though, lots of them get very excited that they can have moko. But, we hear this idea that moko is about whakapapa. You need to know your whakapapa. Do people need to know their whakapapa before, coming to get moko from you?
That's a really good question. It's a really good question. And once again, I've had experiences with people who, for whatever reasons, don't have knowledge of their whakapapa through a break in the link somewhere in their whānau, for whatever reasons. No, I don't think you do need to know your whakapapa to receive moko. I think for many people, one of the things for some people, especially if they've lost that, that link's been broken and they don't have access to their whakapapa, that knowledge, that moko is going to be an important identity marker for them as just having whakapapa Māori. So for these people who've had a break in the link somewhere and don't have access to that knowledge around their whakapapa, receiving moko is a really important way for them to, as an identity marker, for their whakapapa.
Yes.
And a lot of those people are really interested in learning about it and are interested in pursuing connections, remote as they be, to find a lead to sort of learn more about it.
Yep.
Some people don't know anything about it. I've had a client who didn't know where they whakapapa to, but had a feeling that they whakapapa te Ngāpuhi.
Right.
Just felt it that strongly, So for them, they feel like they whakapapa te Ngāpuhi, so that's who they identify with.
Right. Yeah, cool. Now, and another thing too, which kind of goes hand in hand with the age question as well, and sort of on the topic of the Goldie and the Lindauer paintings, is lots of people, and normally in my experience, I predominantly see this coming from sort of trolls or haters, that they're just trying to find a quick jab in, I guess. But I also see it from a lot of Māori who kind of have this idea that moko is no longer sacred, everybody and anybody's getting it, that kind of rhetoric that we hear. And it's normally surrounding the idea that moko was only ever for chiefs. Is that true?
Are you referring to moko kanohi or just moko in general?
Yeah, let's go moko kanohi because that's normally
moko kanohi. Yeah, I mean, I think even slaves would have their faces marked in some way.
That's right.
There were markings for carvers, for gardeners, for weavers. There would have been certain types of markings that were probably reserved for chiefs and leaders.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that other people wouldn't have had their faces marked in some way.
That's right. Yeah.
And as to people say, sort of talking about how all these people wearing moko kanohi now are sort of cheapening or taking away from its moko kanohi's chiefly status.
Right.
I think everyone is entitled to their opinion, of course, but I think I think people's opinions, especially when they're posted all over the internet, can become and social media. That's when social media can be incredibly dangerous.
Yes.
And damaging, because if you have a question about it or you want to do some research on it, you should seek advice or seek knowledge from a sort of verified source.
That's right.
But people just fling their opinions willy-nilly on the internet, and
they really do.
It's horrifying to watch.
And I always think about, all it takes is one, I don't know, 15-year-old Māori kid to pull up a video of mine, for example, and go, oh, well, he's pretty young, he's got moko, that's pretty cool, oh, maybe I'll do it. And all it takes is to open up the comment section and see the one guy who says, no, you don't deserve that, blah, 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 for them to go, oh, never mind, and then it could potentially completely sort of squash their hopes and dreams, about these things, because like you said, that it also means that these people can just go blah 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 and speak. And like you said, opinions, but sometimes you can kind of go, yeah, but there's got to be a truth in there somewhere, and like we said, once upon a time, even the slaves, who at the time, of course, we would have considered the bottom end of our societies, or iwi depending, were even still getting their faces marked, and so you can imagine everybody else in between. And so like the sort of factual standing behind only chiefs had moko kanohi is just kind of like almost not even true, so it's a real shame.
The other thing is that who are these people to weigh in or pass judgment? That's another thing that makes it dangerous. Is are they moko artists?
That's right. 99% of the time they're not.
are they any authority to speak on it? They're not a moko artist. Then in my belief they're not.
Yes.
And that's a dangerous thing about people throwing their opinions around on the internet. People can say anything. People can say whatever they want, and they can hide behind their screen. They can have a private profile, So yeah. Yeah,
no, and totally, because eventually that was what eventually made me decide to just sort of bite the bullet and make this series, was because I was like, man, I keep trying to tell people, like, I'll answer the basic stuff, the simple stuff that you can find probably with a half a Google search, but I was like, man, but they really keep asking and asking and asking. And I was like, but I tell you, I'm genuinely not an authority on this. I was like, if you want, go ask the moko artist. But then people don't listen, right? Like, they come to me, I guess, because they've found me. And even when I can kind of guide them, they go, nah, I'm just going to keep asking you instead. So I was like, all right, I'll bring the moko artist here, because it was like, I'm sick of telling people that I'm by no means the right person to ask. I can only answer so far, but then it's still incredible seeing what, like you said, where's some certain commenters' authority, like I posted some clips from my interview with Turu Makina, one of the legends in the game for moko, and people have, or by the time this comes out, I'm sure people will have seen the episode, and particularly one of the legends regarding moko kanohi, and I posted his take, and there was still Māori going, who's this guy to say blah blah blah? And I was like, I mean, like you said, sure, each to their own. But if you're gonna challenge anyone, this is probably not the guy to challenge,
or the platform for it either.
That's right. Challenge them in person if you're really that passionate about it. It's always fascinating. So, like you mentioned, you feel pretty privileged to have people, passionate about your maki and your style, like myself, to come and travel to see you. One of the hindrances that I see a lot of people approach me with regarding this is, oh, I love this artist's work, but they're not from my iwi, and I thought I had to get moko done from an artist from my iwi. Is that true?
Yeah. No, I don't, in my opinion, it's not. In the old days, artists would travel around to different iwi groups. If they were an expert, those talking with tāmoko were sought after, and they would travel into different areas. So yeah. So yeah, and I think if you've got artists in your area who you like and you want to connect with, then that's great. And I think there's nothing. I think it's good to connect with artists in your area. But there's also nothing wrong with connecting with artists from outside your rohe as well, if that's what you desire.
Awesome. Now, this, other than the is moko only for Māori question, this next question is easily my number one question, and most of the time this comes from my international audience, and maybe because these sorts of conversations are happening in a much larger scale in places like North America and things like that. But that's normally when they find out that moko kanohi particularly can be gender specific, so we know the mata ora or the mata kiore, etc., are normally associated with men, and the moko kaua is normally associated with women. So people are very curious what happens if somebody is transgender, non-binary, takatapu in our language. What's your kaupapa? How do you approach gender specific moko, or how would you, if you never have, when it comes to transgender and non-binary Māori?
That's a really, really interesting question. I would say that I'm no authority at all to speak on that. I would say that having not delved into it, I wouldn't have. Yeah, I don't think I'd have anything that I could speak to it other than pointing you in the direction of female kaita.
Right.
They would probably be the authority there. And there are some who have worked with gender non-binary and transgender clients, and they would be the people to speak to. I think that space should not be held by men.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting take actually too, and because it's one thing I'm trying desperately. No one will pick up my DMs is trying to get some woman kaitara on to have a chat. So I'm hoping I'm holding out for that. This is one of my personal favorite questions. I just sort of love seeing, as a artist myself as well, I love seeing what who artists draw from, and what is sort of shaped their style. And because I would consider, and I have a specific question about this later, but your style is pretty unique. It's I would progressive, I guess, a term that I might call your style. For me, it really pushes the boundaries of like what we associate with moko, and that's why I fell in love with. So I'd love to know who your inspirations have been, as an artist, I guess in all spaces, but particularly moko.
Well, I remember probably my first exposure to moko and moko artists was when I was at carving school in Rotorua, and I was I got to meet Hohua Mohi and Tuihi Preston, one of my mates from carving school. He Paratepa from Tauranga. He did my first moko. So I got to spend a bit of time with those guys, and that sort of gave me my probably initial boost of inspiration for drawing those patterns. Following that, when I started my apprenticeship at Sunset Tattoo, I went and received the moko from Heeds at the Native Studios. And so that was when Heeds gave me that moko, he sort of talked to me about how it would be a point of reference for the start of my journey.
Right.
And as I started drawing the puhoro patterns and some of the other patterns I was designing, I very quickly could see his style coming through what I was drawing, just because it was on my arm and I was looking at it,
Right.
And we've talked about that since. Otherwise, other than that, I was looking at a lot of international artists. If you're talking about sort of other artists who I was inspired by, international tattooers working with sort of bold sort of neo-tribal line work tattooing, and then I guess bringing some references from tukutuku and taineko and just trying to merge everything together, really.
Yes. No, that's awesome, and I'm glad you brought that up real quickly. I'll just interject because a lot of people are very confused when they see my throat, back of my hands even, and now that I've got it, and from certain shots on stage, my puku on my stomach, the geometric style, and people are like, is that moko? What is this? And I go, yeah, it is. And of course I could explain it, but now that I've got the man himself here, explain to people what it is, why it's different, what it's sort of inspired from. That'd be great.
Yeah, so that style that I work in, that tukutuku taineko style, is a style inspired by our traditional textile patterns. So tukutuku patterns were woven big wall panels in between the carvings in our meeting houses, and then tukutuku were the fine patterned weavings that we'd use for the borders of our cloaks, headbands, and other garments. So yeah, what makes it moko This is where I have to be very careful because I've attended wānanga where it's been said that what makes moko that was agreed by a collective of moko artists decades ago is that it has to include a number of different patterns,
right?
Which sort of I don't fully agree with that,
right?
And that's sort of I guess me shooting down off a different road.
Yeah.
I think what makes it moko is the kōrero behind it, and the pattern telling a story for the wearer and connecting to their whakapapa.
Yes, I would agree with that personally. And that's cool too, because the next question, it's about the process. People are very curious. The videos online that we see that go crazy viral on social media, it's always at the end. They've gotten off the table now and they're having a cry and everyone's doing haka, and it's a beautiful thing. But people are always very curious about what actually goes into the process, and you'll be a unique one to talk to about this as well, because the only one in my experience, that will use stencils because of things like geometric shapes. So what's a day, sort of a day on the table look like for you?
Yeah, so the day starts pretty early. With my geometric tuku and taniko style of moko that I do, the difference between that and the curvilinear style is in the curvilinear style, the kōrero happens face to face. Everything's very spontaneous. You're drawing straight on with a pen, whereas in this other style, I ask people to send me a kōrero in advance and sort of have everything on the computer so I can work on the design based on what they've sent through. So the day starts pretty early. I'll get up in the morning and I'll spend some time drawing and preparing myself, and then when the client comes in, I'll have a design to show them if it's in that style.
Yep.
And then based on whether or not we're good to go with it, I'll get everything sized up and make a stencil, apply the stencil, tattoo it. So in that respect, that part of the process, that part of the process in terms of the stenciling and tattooing is pretty similar to any kind of tattooing. With the exception of the kōrero that's been included into those designs and the karakia before and after as well.
Yes, and I was just about to mention too, that I think what's cool as well, is regardless of the, like, what was that word you used? Never heard that. Curvilinear?
Curvilinear.
Yeah, I've never heard that term before. This stuff, for anyone that's curious, the more classic moko look, I guess, like you said, probably what those people would have put under that umbrella of what has to be moko, but that even with the stencil geometric stuff, taniko, tuku inspired stuff, there's still karakia, there's still those same ritualistic processes that go behind the day, even with this sort of unique or more modern style that you have, which I think is cool. Now, we talked before, sometimes if people don't, have the support of their whānau, you might just say maybe not, or just wait till you're 18 if it's an age thing. But what other reasons have you turned people away from getting moko, if any?
Sometimes you just get a bad vibe, And I've had a couple of bad experiences in the past where it leaves you feeling pretty shaken and shaken and not confident, and like you don't want to be doing this anymore because there've been a couple of pretty bad experiences, but you learn from those, and you learn to respect your own boundaries and keep yourself safe. So I have spoken to a couple of people and just gotten a vibe that it's not going to work. Right. Something's off. And you get better at that with the years, and you just try and gently let people down and say that you're not the best person for them.
Yeah, great. And now, kind of still in the same vein of, like I said, I consider your style, quite progressive. It's quite pushing of the art forms, and it's very distinct and very, very cool for anyone that hasn't seen it. You got to go check it out. This applies to both the geometric tuku taniko stuff, but also your curvilinear. I've got that word now. That style of yours is really unique. I think the way that you do that sort of moko is, I couldn't pinpoint it on anybody else's style. You know what I mean? And so I'm always fascinated with the process of evolution throughout art forms, So how do you as an artist push the boundaries of moko, evolve the style while trying to stay true to the art forms, if that's a thing, you know? And in your experience, even throughout your journey, how has moko itself evolved? You know, obviously nowadays we see a lot of stuff like color, modern tools is a big thing for people, like the fact that we use modern machines and not uhi in that anymore. You know, how's that process been for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an awesome journey. I think trying to as I've sort of been on this learning journey over the last 8 or 9 years, just constantly experimenting. You know, one of the biggest reference points is just as far back as you can go. So looking at books of sort of old drawings and old photographs and seeing what kind of patterns they were using and seeing what the structures were like. In some cases there are rules, like, you know, when you're drawing whai patterns, puhoro and koru, there are sort of a few rules that you follow. Otherwise it just looks completely wacky. And every time I see someone not following those rules, I'm like, what's going on? So there are things like that, but then you know, once you've got that understanding of how patterns can fit together, you can start to push it a bit. And that's where it gets really fun.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting that you mentioned, because people always ask me, you know, when I say, oh, you got to be careful that the artist is right, and lots of people go, well, how do I know if it's you know, it's a Māori artist, it's a moko artist, for people who are around the globe sort of thing. And for me, I'm always like, well, the first sign is what it looks like, you know, but that's coming from someone who's fortunate enough to be able to pick it apart. And because, like you say, there are some, well, I guess spoken or maybe unspoken rules, you know, like you said, about certain ways that it flows, certain things like that. And normally the first thing when you see these European artists or whoever that are taking it is it doesn't follow any of it. You know, they've seen a koru or they've seen the puhoro spiral and they've just tried to whack, and they like whack it all in together, and it doesn't follow any of the normal flow states and patterns that we would normally see from, you know, you guys. And it's always, it just stands out so much. And people who know, and I'm always like, it's a very difficult thing to try and explain to people, because I'm like, you just know.
no, and that is a good point. I would say that people would, you know, I'd say that most moko artists would probably put a bit of information about themselves, either on their website or on their contact information, whether that's on Instagram or Facebook, just so that people know who they are. Yes. Maybe where maybe what their tribal affiliations are. So that people can reach out to them. If you were to see someone's profile and they just had their name and maybe not a lot of information, it might be a little bit suspect. And maybe not a cat. In today's time, maybe, this is a huge assumption, but like in today's time, if you scroll through somebody's like a moko artist thing and they probably, you know, they don't really have it, you'd normally be, Kōwai is probably a good place to, like, a point of reference. You know, I normally only ever see Kōwai, sorry, I should say the opposite. I normally only ever see the international people. You know, they do the sleeve, the 3/4 sleeve. They kind of do the chest, the rock thing. You know, they like to do the rock placement, that chest shoulder kind of thing going on. But normally, if you go look to an actual moko artist, of course, they've got the whole lot, and there's normally quite a lot of Kōwai, you know. And I always say it's probably a safe bet, is if you start to see lots of women with their chins done, you're probably looking at a real moko artist, and then you can go delve a bit deeper, you know. But it's one of those sort of things you notice. It's like the European ones, they just do in that shoulder to sleeve one over and over and over and over again, you know. Yeah, and if you're not sure, then just ask, you know.
Yeah, that's right, man. So this is my last question. But you know, I'm a huge fan of film, video games. It's kind of like one of my things. And so I get lots of questions about, oh my God, have you seen X movie? Or have you played X game? They've got this face tattoo in this, or they've got this and that, and it kind of looks like moko blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And they're like, is it cultural appropriation? You know, that's the word that always follows. And sometimes it's not even moko inspired, you know, like I'm like, it's just not even unrelated. It's just a face tattoo, you know, blah, 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 blah. But there are plenty of circumstances. A big movie of recent is the Avatar movie is a good example. And there are plenty of games as well that do feature, obviously, moko inspired or even trying to be moko markings within their media. For you as a moko artist, where is that line? Where's that line between appropriation and appreciation?
Yeah, I think things like I think Hollywood is probably to an extent, getting pretty good at just blurring the lines. Like when I watched Avatar 2, because it was Cliff Curtis playing the Water Tribe chieftain. When as soon as I saw that scene, I just was like, what is going on? You can't even call it cultural appropriation because it's the whole thing is so muddled up.
That's right.
You know, and to me it's just ridiculous. But then there are things. There was a movie years ago with Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley.
That's right.
Ender's Game or something that he was wearing a tifana.
Yep.
So there are things like that, and I think that's probably is cultural appropriation. And I think there's big movie companies and game companies probably do this stuff, and then they get called out from it, or they get feedback.
Yeah.
And we live in an era where there's a lot more awareness around things like cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
And people are probably treading a bit more carefully. Yeah.
Yeah. Fun fact about the Ben Kingsley one too, because I just got off an interview a couple of days ago with Gordon Toy. He was the one that designed that, so they approached him for that, and he designed Ben Kingsley's. He didn't even call it, because it was like he changed it. He was like, oh well, it's not moko. It's not going to be the moko that we know today. He says, he's like, I'll create this kind of fantasy sci-fi marking for you to represent what you want. This was to the director of the film, and so he made up this kind of moko inspired design that you when you put it side by side, and that's where Avatar walks as well. Although the Ben Kingsley one is definitely more on the nose because the character itself is supposed to be Maori, but the Avatar ones, you're right, because it's like, I mean, and James Cameron was blatant in his inspiration. He was like, we were inspired by Maori, like the whole people, really. It was Polynesian aliens.
Yeah.
But he was like, so we're gonna do the face tattoo thing. But then when you look at them, they're so not moko looking. Like if you put them next to my face, for example, it doesn't look anything alike, when you look at it and you know it. And so you go, have they changed it enough? Like
it's
maybe
it's a very clever mishmash of different Polynesian forms of tattooing, but it's so sort of, it's so sort of in the middle somewhere. It's so in the middle that you can't really accuse it of being one or the other.
That's right. But whereas like lots of the video games, and that's normally where I see the worst example of the appropriation is in video games, and it's for things like, cosmetics or skins or the tattoos that you can have for your character. And where they really sort of fall short for me is that, it's, they'll have tattoo 1, tattoo 2 or whatever, and then it'll say poly tattoo 1, and then it's like some really, really awfully designed attempt at facial moko, and you go, that one is a little bit, too on the nose to excuse it, like the Avatar ones, like you said, there's this big gray area. It really walks that line between inspiration, but then there's the video games. For me, are normally the worst culprits of just the most egregious.
And are these skins on games things that you can buy with real money, or they?
You know what? I've never actually played any of the games that do it, but I would assume so. We're talking like the Call of Duties or the Grand Theft Autos, where it's just a cosmetic thing that you can probably buy. So even worse.
Yeah, it's just
cash
shit.
grabs.
It's just shitty. It's terrible.
Yeah, and what always sort of adds, what's the saying? Something about it. Insult to injury is that they're also terrible. The key there is that they're also terribly designed, because they're clearly not been designed by a moko artist, or someone with the knowledge of. So they're just like, even as a Maori person, then if I was like, oh well, at least I can kind of rep with stuff. I don't want to rep with that. It's so bad. Oh, it's so bad. Anyway, bro, we wrapped this up super quick. This might be the quickest one yet. Uhiwara was pretty fast as well. But thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to have a kōrero with me today. I think this will be super interesting for people, and people really like listening to the artists that I've used, that have done me, and are the artists that did the stuff that people are looking at every single day they open up their phone. Last little thing here is, any advice for Māori who are thinking about getting moko?
Just talk to a moko artist. Reach out. No one's gonna bite your arm off or anything like that.
Yeah.
We're here. We're here to serve our communities. So just send an email, send a message. Contact your artist who's going to be a right fit for you, and just start that conversation.
I think that's a good point too, because I think you're right. People get people get afraid to, ask you guys. I think that's half the reason I get 100 million questions first. I get all these questions, I get the obvious questions, but then I get the stuff that I'm like, it does not matter what I say, because I'm not going to give you the moko. So by the time I answer this question, you're going to go find an artist and they're going to give you a completely different question. Just ask the moko artist from the beginning. They're the practitioner, they're your guide through this whole journey, and so I think that's a good point. I think people do that. They get afraid of insulting or being disrespectful unintentionally, of course, most of the time, which I think is why they're afraid in the first place. It's this notion that they're trying to be as appropriate and respectful of the tradition as possible. But I'm like, these are your people. It's literally their job.
Yeah, it's our job. So yeah, ask questions, and that's That's probably the best place, one of the best places for people to get information from. There are books out there.
Yes.
You have to be very careful with the internet.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably one of the most dangerous places to get information regarding moko. But there are some books that are great, some old books and some newer ones as well. Gordon Toy's written a couple of really good books. And then talk to your artists. That's one of the best things you can do.
Yeah, awesome. Now wrap it up and just let everybody know where they can reach you. Emails, socials. I mean, I tag the social anyway because I know it, but emails and other forms of contact if people want to reach out or find you.
Yeah, cool. So I'm based in Tamaki, Makaurau, Auckland, and my website is www.manawatapu.co.nz. Email is info@manawatapu.com. Instagram is Manawa_Tapu. And yeah, that's it.